Yes people, what is good? My name's Liam Cox from Tech House Market, and today we're going to go over how to make tech house like Oddmob. Now Oddmob has been absolutely smashing it at the minute, getting loads of DJ support from all around the world, and today we're going to dive into his unique style and what makes it different and why it makes him so successful. So let's dive straight in. So if we dive straight into one of the most important parts of the track, which is the drums. Now Oddmob's drums are very punchy and powerful and cut through the mix, and the key thing here is sound selection. So we have to select the right sounds, like the right kick, the right hat, for it to work with the other elements of the track. So for this kick, I've just gone through and basically created a drum groove here, and for this kick we've just gone for this sort of punchy, really subby low end kick. So if we click play, as you can hear, it hasn't got a very long tail to it. It's very short, punchy, snappy, but it's got a lot of sub information, and that's very important with the style that he sort of makes his track in, as this needs to work really well with the bass. So now we've got our kick in place. I've just added some hats, so a closed hat, open hat, and an extra hat as well. Again, focusing on the sort of short and snappy element of the drums. They're not very long, they haven't got much sustain at all. And yeah, just super solid, cuts through the mix, great sample choices in the first place. And when I build my drums like this, I always like to sort of add them in and experiment with them with all the rest of the drums that I've already added playing. So basically you can just see if they're in context with what you're doing. So now if we move on to the claps, we've got two claps here. Again, very bright, powerful, and when making sound choices like this, it's always good to listen to like a reference track into what style you sort of want to make. In this instance, I listened to like an Oddmob track to see what the characteristics were of his clap, hats, kick, etc., and sort of took inspiration from that and went to find samples that were in that same sort of area. Super solid kick, hat and clap. Now we move on to the loops. All I've done here is just added in some top loops. Nothing too fancy. And then I've done some cool effects, which Oddmob does quite a lot. He adds in like these sort of atmospheric sounds that you wouldn't normally notice, but they're in there, and if you were to take them away, you could hear the difference. Here we've got like a reverse clap and then like a hat effect, just to add a bit more groove, bit of ear candy. Now we move on to the shaker. We've got two shakers, one of them slightly panning. Just adding to the sort of groove to the track. Now we have another percussion hit. And this is the sort of low, deep stuff that Oddmob would use with that sort of atmospheric sound to it as well. And that happens every 4 bars. And then finally we have like a sort of glitch loop, which adds a bit of like texture to the drums, makes them a bit different and stand out. Again, not making a huge difference, but it like adds another element to the drums and keeps them interesting and adds a bit of texture and character to them. So those are the drums. A really important thing that I would also note is that Oddmob's tracks are fairly high in tempo compared to most tech house tracks. So this is a 131, and we'll see why that's important when we go onto the bass line, but it just gives that nice groove. So yeah, these are the drums, short, snappy, powerful, cuts through the mix. So now we're going to dive into a really important part of this track and what makes the Oddmob style of tech house so unique, and basically why it sounds a certain way. With this bass line, it's very simple. I'm just going to give it a play now by itself, then I'm going to play it with the kick. So as you can hear, it's a sort of syncopated bass with an extra note added in here and there just for a bit of groove. But the reason why this works so well is because if we play it with the kick, it gives that really nice sort of groove that basically Oddmob uses in all of his tracks. That's what gives it that sort of pumping, like fast moving feel. So if we play it with the kick, so yeah, sounding sort of really pumping, sort of the offbeat bass, and that's what makes it feel that certain way and why it works so well with that sort of faster tempo, and that's why it doesn't sound like too crowded, etc. Because if we had a normal bass at sort of 131, it might start to sound a bit sort of overcrowded. Now if we play this with our drums, So super solid foundations, and I just made this bass in Serum. It's very basic, it's just a square wave and a saw. Then I've just adjusted the envelope, set it to the cutoff here, and that's about it. And then I've added some decapitator, yeah, and that's really it, to be honest. And then a kickstart to sort of duck it from the kick. But for the bass line, that is it. That's what generally he uses, is like this offbeat sort of syncopated bass that works super well to kick. So now we've gone over our drums and our bass, it's now time to dive into some vocals. Oddmob's vocals are normally quite spoken word, not much lyrical content. It's normally quite unique and fits very well with the track and the vibe he's going after. Like I said, there isn't many like verses or like huge choir sort of vocals, diva vocals, nothing like that. It's normally very spoken word and a very simple but also very catchy hook. I've just sampled a sort of bit of a vocal loop here, and it just sounds like this. I've got you on my mind. So very simple, but it has that sort of tone that would fit very well with something like this. And then all I've done is sort of chopped up parts of it. I've got you on my mind. And just added some effects just to variate it throughout the track. And I've arranged it in a way that on the drop, it happens just before the drop, and then throughout the drop it has these little chops and this effect section. Processing wise, not much is going on at all, just an oxide inflator for a bit of like saturation, some fresh air to bring out some of the highs, and then just some reverb and delay. And again, it's just spending that time choosing the right sample that would fit in context with your track. So now if we play our vocal with the drums and the bass. I've got you on my mind. So as you can hear, perfectly in key, fits really well going into the drop, and then just these little stabs here. So now we move on to the synths. Oddmob is known for his use of like dark, really like huge sort of synth sounds, a lot of FM stuff as well. So it's really important to keep that in mind when choosing what basically sound to use as your synth lead and how we're going to use it. In this case, I've gone for that sort of really dark brass sound, and I've used this in a way that would A-B with the vocal. So when the vocal isn't playing, I've come up with a basic melody for this brass sound, and then when it stops playing, the vocal chops come in. And also this is just a sample that I've found, chucked it into a sampler, just added some OTT, saturation, clipping, etc, etc. So yeah, if we just listen to this. As you can hear, like really big sort of dark sounds, again fitting with this sort of theme that we've been making, so it fits with the vocal and that sort of really punchy drums. If we play this with the vocal hook. I've got you on my mind. I've got you on my mind. I've got you on my mind. So as you can hear, it's really important to sort of break up your hooks. So in this case, we've got a vocal hook and a synth hook, and it's really important to give it their own space because the drums and the bass have already got a really good groove going. So you don't want to mess that up by overcrowding it. So in this instance, like I said, I've created a simple groove with this brass, and then when that's not playing, I've just chopped up this vocal, added some effects, and it works really well together. Again, it's very important sound choice wise when choosing your synth, go for something that would be like dark and fits with the track very well, rather than like something that you might like the sound of but doesn't go with the context of the track. Let's listen to everything we have so far, which is the vocal, the synth, the bass and the drums. I've got you on my mind. Right now we're super on target, sounds great in terms of the Oddmob style, so let's just dive into the finishing touches. So to finish it off, I've added in some effects just to sort of bring it all together and basically to get everything to sort of gel and more impact on the drop. What I've done here is I've taken a part of the vocal and bounced it out with some reverb, and then all I've done is reversed it to get this really cool sort of vocal reverse effect. And then again, I've added some endless smile on the end here to basically just create a towel at the end of the vocal shot that we've got here, just so it doesn't cut off straight away. And then because that's in key as well, it'll work with our track and fit nicely in. And here we've just got a riser. with some tremolo just to send the signal left and right to keep it interesting, and then just a basic snare roll. Again, very like heavy, dark sort of snare roll to fit in with the context. And then the final piece that I've added is just sort of like a white noise. Very sharp, not like a standard sort of long, like bright white noise, very sort of sharp and dark to fit in the context of our track. So that is everything we've done to create a track in the style of Odd Mob. Let's take one listen through to hear everything together.
I've got you on my mind.
So that is how to create a track in the style of Odd Mob. If you guys enjoyed this video, then make sure to click the like button, leave a comment below, and also subscribe to Tech House Market, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.